Hey, welcome to Board with Life News for August 26th. Today I'm going to talk about a Convoy reprint, Treefrog game shutting its doors, Mule the board game, a new Ticket to Ride map expansion, as well as the Kickstarter for Trove. Let's get to it. Hey, I'm Chris. Welcome to Board with Life News. If you haven't listened to our Dungeons & Dragons podcast, tomorrow we're releasing, I think it's the 13th episode, and that is a fantastic place for you to jump in. This is a podcast where the cast and crew of Board with Life play Dungeons & Dragons. We are now 12 episodes into an ongoing campaign of Dungeons & Dragons, but we're building in kind of a really good catching up point on this episode. So if you haven't listened to any of it, you don't need to listen to any of it. You can just start right at episode 13 and we'll catch you up. It'll sort of be like a previously on type thing and then get right into it. So if you've been waiting on that, now's a great time to do it. Okay, that's great. Now on to board game news. Portal Games announced that they're going to be doing a reprint of the game The Convoy, and it's going to be called Nurashima Convoy. This is set in the Nurashima universe along with Nurashima Hex and a bunch of older Portal games, as well as the RPG and stuff like that. Convoy is an asymmetrical card game for 2 players. This reprint is going to include streamlined rules, upgraded graphic design, and along with that upgraded graphic design, they're going to be replacing a lot of the confusing icons for just text, which is a thing that a lot of games kind of fall into recently because you want a game to be language independent so that you can publish it in all sorts of different markets with all sorts of different languages without having to do another print run with specific, text for each language. But sometimes publishers run into the problem where the icons just get confusing and it's a hurdle to get into the game. So this should be a good reprint. Famed designer Martin Wallace has announced that his publishing company, Treefrog Games, will be shutting its doors. This is in the midst of he's in a legal battle over his game Brass and the publishing rights to that and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's related to that or not, but he says that while he won't be producing games under Treefrog anymore, he'll still be making games. They'll just be going to other publishers. You don't have to worry. He's still going to be designing, but unfortunately, he said high costs of living in New Zealand, not living in New Zealand, but having a game company in New Zealand and having to ship all over the world and stuff like that was one of the factors, but basically his game company is shutting down. He's going to keep designing, though. We've gotten news this week of Mule the board game. This is based off of the popular and very influential computer game from 1983. I say that as if that's my information that I'm giving to you, but I was negative 2 years old in 1983, so I've never heard of this before in my life, but apparently it was a popular and influential computer game way back in the day. Mule the board game is going to be an economic game that sees you assigning mules, which are multiple use labor elements to work in different plots of land that you have, hopefully getting resources so you can build more mules. It's kind of interesting to base a board game off of a video game that's this old because most of the video games from back in that day were pretty heavily influenced by board games, where, of course, video games still are somewhat influenced by board games, but not nearly so clearly. So apparently it was very board game-like as far as video games go, but yeah, I guess some people are really excited about this. Certainly not news I was expecting, but interesting nonetheless. Ticket to Ride is getting its 5th map collection. This is going to be United Kingdom and Pennsylvania. The 2 maps are going to add different things into the game. In the United Kingdom side, it's going to add technology, where initially you're only going to be able to build 1 or 2 train routes until you upgrade your technology. You can also build ferries and things of that nature. So there's a little bit of tech going in that one. And in the Pennsylvania side, this adds shares of companies. So it's kind of like a stock game or whatever, where every time you complete a route, you get a share of a company, and whoever has the most shares of each specific company at the end of the game gets a special bonus. So seem like real simple additions to Ticket to Ride. I'm sure people will be excited about this that are excited about Ticket to Ride. I still am a little bit bitter that the 10th anniversary, amazing, awesome, deluxe Ticket to Ride version isn't compatible with any of the expansions. So if you're really into Ticket to Ride enough to get that, and you have expansions, you also need the base game of Ticket to Ride, which is kind of weird. Maybe you have Ticket to Ride Europe. Anyways, yeah, enough about my complaints with Ticket to Ride. The Kickstarter for this week is for Trove. This is actually a game that Donald and Nikki got a chance to play at Gen Con. I sadly didn't. I was off doing something else. And Donald said it was one of the weirdest games he had played. He said it was pretty unlike any other game he played. This is because it's a highly asymmetrical game for up to 4 players, where each player plays a different character, and they're basically playing different games. They have different mechanics, different win conditions, different characters, it's not like, oh, your character gets to roll 2 dice instead of 1. It's like, your character is doing this thing while someone else is doing something else. The 4 players that you can play are either the knight, the dragon, goblins, or the cave itself. It's set in a cave. So that's really interesting. It's a very different game, and one that I bet people kind of pick up on, and we'll see more of games like that in the future. It's got fantastic artwork. I really, really love the artwork, and it is $45 right now on Kickstarter. So if you're interested in that, go back it. That's the news for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and go check out our podcast, which is Board with Life Radio. We've got links to all that stuff down below if you're interested in checking that out. Also check out our sister podcast, Houses and Humans, where some of us play RPGs, indie RPGs, with other people in the board game and video game industries. All right, the question this week comes from @5MinuteGamer via Twitter, and they ask, do you cull or replace games in your collection? Yes, I do, quite often, in fact. I mostly do it through math trades via BGG, and that's a really good way to get rid of old games, but it doesn't make my collection any smaller because I just get new games that take up more space. I recently moved all my games into a game room where I actually have like a room that's like my office, and I have all my games in it, so I got more space, so I don't need to cull as often because I just have more shelf space now. I also found that when I was getting into board game design, I started missing some of those games that I had traded away or sold, where they're games that I don't necessarily like that much or don't play that much or anything like that, but they'd have a mechanic that I wanted to explore or an implementation that I thought was really interesting, and I was like, I really wish I had that game still. So I've started getting rid of less games because I don't have to like a game as much to keep it now. It just has to have something interesting or something that I can pick apart. But yeah, I still pretty regularly get rid of games. Alright, that's the news for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.